Hi, I'm Kim, and in this tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make a very simple 4-patch block, which is a great block if you are a beginner and wanting to get going with patchwork and get those seams matching in the middle. So let me switch camera to show you what we need. There we go, so you can see my cutting table now. So we're going to need 4 squares beautifully cut out. If you're new to cutting, I'll pop a link to the video to show you how to cut your squares out. So these squares are 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches around there, which means we'll get a finished size of 4 inches. So there's a little clue there with whatever you want your finished square size to be, just add 1/2 inch to that, and that allows for the seam allowances. So we've got 4 squares here. I've got 2 dark and 2 light to keep this nice and simple. And I'm going to alternate those, lay them out on my cutting mat in a nice checkerboard pattern there. So what I'm going to do, we're going to go over to the sewing machine. I forgot what I was going to say then. And we're going to sew those 2 together, and we're going to sew those 2 together, right sides together and right sides together. So let me pause this video, get the sewing machine, and I will meet you there in a moment. Okay, so we're at our machine and we've got our 2 4.5 inch squares, and we're going to sew these right sides together just down one side. So if I angle my camera at the machine, and we've got to set it on a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you're either going to use your 1/4 inch foot and get your edge of the fabric against the edge of the foot, or if you've got a little computerized machine, then if you set your stitch width to 5.5, you'll probably find that that is a 1/4 inch with your standard foot on. So all I am going to do is sew down here with a 1/4 inch. Of course, my foot has disappeared, foot pedal disappeared. Go straight down there, making sure that this raw edge is sitting nicely against the edge of your foot here. Okay, so that's one that we've got here. Let's just open that up and show you. Okay, and I'm going to do the other one, which is just off camera for a moment, but it will appear as if by magic in one moment. So I'm just lining up the edges. So there we go. I've lined up the edges here, and we're going to sew down the second one. Again, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so let's have a look at those then. Here are our two patches that we've sewn together, and I'm going to sit them with the dark side, the darker fabric on top, because what I want to be able to do is press them with the seam on the dark side. So what I would do is have the dark side on top, I'd get my iron and I would press along there, and I'd get right into that seam to really press that seam flat so that my seam ends up on the dark side there. The reason for that is so they don't show through on the light side. So I'm going to hop along and go and do that. So if you can do that too, if you're doing it along with me, and then we'll meet back here and then we'll join those 2 together. All right, so we've pressed these to the dark side. If I flip that over, you can see that's nice and flat now going to the dark side, which means, as I said, all the seams will hide behind the dark. Now, what I'm going to do is change one of those round 180 degrees so that we've got this checkerboard effect, and now we're going to join those 2 together, and we need to match that seam in the middle. So the first thing I'm going to do is flip one on top of the other so they are right sides together. And then one of the good things about pressing these seams to the dark side is because now they're going in opposite directions, which means we can nest those seams, which means we get that perfect little seam match in the middle. So I'm going to get myself a pin. I like a pin. Some people do it freehand. I like a pin. But let's get rid of those little whiskers on the top, shall we? That's a very bent pin. Let's get a straight pin. So if I hold that up to camera here, can you see here that I am aiming to run that seam against each other so they nest together? Can you see that? I'll show that again. I'm going to butt those two edges together. I don't want them overlapping, and I don't want a gap like that. I'm exaggerating that, but I'm not aiming for that. I'm aiming for those two seam lines to be exactly together. And if I roll those up and I make that seam at the top, those two seams nest together, and you'll feel with your fingers if they're overlapping or not. So it's a really good thing to learn to feel with your fingers to see what it feels like. Let's get it all straight. I'm holding it up to camera, so it's moving around quite a lot. Okay, so let's just do that again. All right, so can you see there that those two are beautifully lined up? And I'm going to stick a pin in that seam there. All right, and if I've got a little pin in that seam there, and if you want to put another couple of pins in, absolutely put another couple of pins in. I think sometimes the more pins the merrier. Okay, and if I'm happy at that stage, then we're going to go back under the machine and we're going to stitch down there. And I leave my pins in, but I go very slowly over the pins. I don't want my needle to hit those pins, so I go over very, very slowly. But let's get on to the machines and we'll do that together. Here we are then at the machine, and we've got our pinned center seams there. And now all I'm going to do is run down with a 1/4 inch seam along this edge here where you've just been pinning. So off I go. And remember, when we come down here, we want to go slow over these pins. We do not want to be hitting the pins because you don't want broken needles or broken pins or broken anything. Flying broken pins can be quite dangerous, so we don't want that. Okay. All right, so that's that. So I've got a 1/4 inch seam all the way down there, and then I'm going to take my pins out, and then you need to offer a little prayer to the quilting gods, because if we're lucky and we've done it right, I can't actually open it. Okay, this is live on camera. There you go. Look, you've got perfect seam in the middle there. Can you see? So that's what we're aiming for. So all I would do then is give that a press open. And if I angle my camera down and do a little moving about, there we go. You can see that we have got a 4 patch there with a matching seam in the middle. So I hope that helps you make your first 4 patch. Do let me know how you get on, and if you want any other tutorials, please stick a comment below. I do read them all, and I will endeavour to record your video. Thanks ever so much for watching. Bye for now.